Hello and welcome. Thank you for coming to today's special webinar, 7 Strategies to Prepare Your Personal Injury Firm for the Economic Slowdown. My name is Mike Wells. I'm the background organizer on today's session. Today's session is going to be presented by Atticus founder and practice advisor Mark Powers, as well as
Mike, I think we lost you. We lost it. We got muted there. We dropped off. So, Mike, I'm just going to pick up from here. Sure. Patrick, you can hear me okay?
I hear you fine, Mark.
So, Mike, I'll do a 3, 2, 1 count so we can start the recording for those that can't be here today. And I assume you'll start the recording right then. So, deal with the coronavirus. And I love the quote that we have here: hope for the best, prepare for the worst, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. And so it is going to be interactive. And on your GoToWebinar, there's a feature where you can chat, where you can ask questions and type in the questions. And Mike, when he gets his voice back from the GoToWebinar, we'll be able to capture those questions and articulate them later on. Or if you share something and you're seeing something you want us to mention, please go ahead and jump in with the chat. Also, you can raise your hand. There's an icon to indicate that you want to be unmuted and that you want to speak. So I think everyone knows Mark Powers, and the president of Atticus. And also on the call, we're lucky to have Patrick Wilson with us. Hey, Patrick.
Hi, Mark. Hi, everybody.
So Patrick has been coaching PI firms for over 20 years now. Patrick coaches some of the best PI firms in the country. I couldn't think of a better person to have on this call with us. So Patrick, thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Love working with PI attorneys.
And everyone can see Patrick because the webinar he and I are being broadcast on the video, so you should be able to see us. And you can see we look very different from our glamour pictures. I would say keep pencil and paper at the ready, take lots of notes. It's going to be very interactive. And here's our intention today. We want to make sure that you have a readiness plan to support and protect you, your staff, and your clients, that you've positioned your PI firm to be the market leader it needs to be in providing resources, powerful resources, and solutions to your client, and how to stay focused on marketing despite these conditions. We have a phrase at Atticus, and it's never, ever, ever, ever stop marketing, even in times like this. So Patrick and I will spend a little bit of time on that as well. The interesting thing about marketing, it's hard to focus on marketing if you're not surviving, if you're not taking care of yourself and your firm. So we'll talk about that first. The other thing that Patrick and I would say is that in this crisis, your leadership absolutely matters. Your team is going to look to you for guidance more than ever. It's going to be your job to calm them, to help them be responsive to your clients and lead them to the other side of the crisis. Patrick, you want to say anything about this?
I do. Thanks, Mark. Most of you have been around Atticus for a while and you're familiar with the DISC personality construct. If you're not, you'll just have to look it up after we talk a bit. But remember, most of your staff are going to be high S, high C personality styles, and they're going to respond differently. Most of you, we know, are high D, high I personality styles, and so you respond to stress quite differently than they do. Some of you are invigorated, actually, by the challenge. One of the attendees on the call, his associate, who's a quite high D, came to him yesterday or the day before and closed the door, and he said, "Hey, don't tell anybody this, but I've never felt so alive." So most people think that's insane, right? Your high C personalities are driven by fear on a good day, right? Now with so much uncertainty, right? They're really driven by fear. The steadiness personality style obviously likes things even, likes things the same. Right now, the world is full of upset and change. So they're not happy. Whatever anxiety you've got, double it for them.
Yeah.
So it's okay to freak out. If you're working with somebody one-on-one, freak out to your coach. Find somebody that's safe to freak out to, because we all every now and then, just get hit with a wave of panic about this thing. But with your staff, yeah, that steady captain demeanor. We're not BSing them, right? We're being honest with them. This is bad. There'll be consequences. We're having to change. But if you show them that you're confident and that you've got a plan, then that confidence will permeate your firm, right? And it will calm them down. And that's something they need big time from you. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but right now you've really got to over communicate. If you do a weekly staff meeting, forget that. Do a daily staff meeting.
Right.
They need to hear from you and hear your calm and your resolve and your confidence again and again and again.
It's a great point, Patrick. And the other point we'd make is take care of yourself. So take care of your brain, take care of your body. Some of you have a tendency to get off of your diets, get off of your exercise routines and habits. Keep those going. They're going to be critical during your process. Take care of your brain. Do what you can to get sleep, and it's difficult these days, I know, under stress, but meditate. Use focusing tools. Patrick and I are going to speak to some of those focusing tools that get your mind working in the right direction when anxiety wants to take over. And it's helpful to stay in a place of gratitude. There's some of our clients that are doing gratitude exercises where every day they're trying to remember that and stay focused there because it's so easy for the brain to take over. And so Patrick mentioned this, that the concern and the anxiety levels are changing daily for you and your team, especially for your team. And the thing that's going to give you an edge through this crisis and through the slowdown is making sure that you are focusing on facts and you're keeping your team focused on the facts, not the emotions. Start to understand what you can control and what you can't control. So we're not going to control the courts. We're not going to control whether your building gets closed down that your office is inside of. We're not going to control the schools getting closed or state mandated lockdowns or quarantines. We can't control people getting ill. But what we can control is your attitude, your anxiety, your expectations. We can control the ability of your team to be productive in working in a virtual modality, and we can control some of the expenditures. So, Patrick, you want to say anything about this?
And we may say more about this later in the thing, but I would underscore the worst case scenario planning. I sent out an email to my clients a week ago, Monday, and told them they need to do this. And in talking to some of them this week, some of them still hadn't done it. So I understand there's a level of shock out there, and there's even a level of sticking your head in the sand and hoping you wake up and it's just all been a bad dream. But in the worst case scenario planning, you really have to be specific about it, right? You have to name a dollar figure over the next 6 months, over the next 9 months. What's a worst case scenario for you for income? And then how will you bring your budget down to match out, to level out with that level of income? Not that you have to act on it now, but you need to have a plan. When you have that, once you face that worst case scenario plan, then your thinking will clear up. You'll see clouds of anxiety part away because now you know it's survivable. So if you haven't done that yet, man, do it as soon as we hang up here.
Yeah, and that's a great point. We're going to be walking you through some of that financial planning, but what you're trying to do what Patrick is telling us to do is minimize the uncertainty, make sure we have clear plans, and manage your focus. And it's going to shift everything for everyone. The other thing that Patrick and I want to say is that for a lot of you already see this, but hidden inside of this crisis, there will be challenges that will produce opportunity, that will produce breakthroughs, that will propel you, your team, and your firm to new heights. And we're not talking about being opportunistic here. We're just saying that there are things that as we deal with this that we want to pay attention to. And Patrick and I have a slide that we're going to talk about some of the opportunities. But we also have to remember, as we're looking at opportunities and going back to Patrick's sort of worst case scenario thinking, we have to remember the Stockdale Paradox. And I don't know if you're familiar with who Admiral Jim Stockdale is, but he was, during the Vietnam War, he was the highest ranking POW officer excuse me, he was one of the highest ranked officers in a POW camp. And he was noted for bringing out more people alive than any other camp. And after he got out, he was interviewed by all the business gurus and how he did it. And he said, how did you get these people through this terrible, terrible, worst thing in their life, crisis? And they said, the author said, were you optimistic, or is that how you got them out, or were they optimistic? And he goes, no, the optimists died first, because they thought that we'd get through this on any day and they'd be out. The pessimists died quickly too. He said, who made it are people that follow this. And he said, this is what I gave my team that got them out, is that they can never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which we can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of our current reality, whatever they might be. And so that's what Patrick speaks to, and that's one of the things that why Patrick's such a great coach, is that he's going to have us and have you focus on the reality. Let's confront them, let's deal with them, let's know what they are, let's let our team know what they are, but let's deal with them head on, and we'll get through this together. So I just think it's a great thing to remember as we go into this. So
I would just add on, it's super important for you and your staff to have that faith and hope that you are going to prevail, but it can't be what I call hopishness. It can't be hope based on nothing. This is hope based on math, right? The math has to work out. You have to figure out, again, what's my income likely to be? How do I bring my expenses down, right? So that we're going to make it. And you don't have to convey all the details of that to your team, but they have to know that you've done the math and you've figured out a way to make it.
So when we talk about, thank you, Patrick, and when we talk about separating fact from reality, what are some of the predictions we can make for PI firms over the next 3 and even 6 months? And in the background, Patrick and I will talk about a couple of them, but you can type some in the comments what you think they are. And if Mike is back with us, he can suggest what some of those are, or Patrick and I can look for them. Patrick, so here are some of the suggestions. I'll put them up on the screen and we can talk about them. Intakes are going to slow way down, right?
Yeah, I mean, miles driven are already way down. My son, ironically, is taking a driver's ed class right now, and I had to drive him to the driver's ed class, which is at rush hour. And there was just very few cars out yesterday. So few cars, few miles being driven means few accidents. On top of which, in any crisis, people just sort of hunker down and don't do anything for a while. So even people that may have accidents recently maybe aren't picking up the phone and calling as quickly as they would. So yeah, so intakes are going to be down for a while.
Do you want to speak to these other ones, Patrick?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so this next one, insurance companies will stall and delay. Now, this one's, the first one's a dead certainty, right? And I'm sure you're already seeing it. Insurance companies stalling and delaying, that's a probable. And that's really based on the stock market. So, or other factors, but primarily the stock market. So far, I don't think that they've slowed down that much, other than the sense that they're limited by their own people having to work from home, and their own level of upset as their business, day-to-day business operations have been disrupted. They're probably operating somewhere between 60 to 80% of normal capacity, maybe like you are. Some of them were more or less prepared to work in a virtual environment. Some of them may be based in places like New York, where the situation is relatively bad and there's more chaos. Some of them may be based other places. So I think there's maybe some slowdown, but I don't really think it's a stall or delay. But what we saw in 2008, 2009, when the stock market lost 60% of its value, the insurance companies got wiped out in their investments. So they stalled and delayed many things till the eve of trial. So that's a possibility we need to prepare for. Right now, the stock market's down 25, 30%. I know there was a big rally yesterday, but a one-day rally does not a trend make. So you really got to watch it. I think if the stock market goes down 40, 50, 60%, we should expect exactly what we saw in 2009, 2010, which is a lot of stalling and delaying. And obviously, as this goes on, the cash will tighten up. Difficult decisions will need to be made, right? But that's obvious. but there will be breakthroughs in how you do business. We've seen this with past crises where people figured stuff out that they wouldn't have figured out had they not had to. Even if I can even use Atticus as an example, we, through a crisis called 9/11, indirectly, we learned how to become a virtual company and greatly reduced our overhead by getting rid of the expensive centralized office and learned how to operate, do webinars and communicate remotely and that sort of thing. So there will be some breakthroughs available.
Yeah, and you know, we can talk. You're going to see those. They're going to come. They're going to come through. That's not your main concern right now, right? It's like, okay, I'll see the breakthroughs when they come. But when Patrick says there's going to be difficult decisions, we're going to talk about those in a minute. But they're going to be decisions around whether I have to make staff cuts, whether I have to, I have to deal with technology entirely different, and so going to be some difficult stuff to deal with. So the question is, what can we do right now? How can we prepare ourselves? How can we prepare our firm? So we'll get into the strategies in a second, but we're assuming, and I know the cost of assuming, but we're assuming that some of the basics are already in play, that obviously we've got protocols for hygiene. Someone on the team is designated, whether that's you because you're and your paralegal, or you and your office manager, or you and your leadership team are assessing the crisis on a daily basis around client, staff, cash flow, and making daily decisions. Your team is already working remotely, and if they're not, everyone's practiced working remotely. We're going to do more conversation about this. That you've already started to limit non-essential expenses, and that protocols are in place for how we're communicating with each other, especially if we've gone virtual. So we're assuming some of this, but we're going to hit on it as well. But we're not going to spend a lot of time on hygiene other than cyber hygiene, those sort of things. So,
and by the way, let me remind folks that are watching and listening, because some of you may not know, we've already done a series of webinars. We did a basic response webinar, I believe it was last Tuesday. We've done dealing with technology and working from a virtual office. So if we're skimming over some of these things that you want to take a deeper dive on, those are recorded and stored on the Atticus website at atticusadvantage.com in the, I believe it's What We Do webinars section. You can both sign up and register for future webinars, same place you registered for this. At the bottom of the page are the recordings of those prior webinars. So if you need to catch up on some of those things, you're behind, that would be the place to do it.
Great point, Patrick. And I know if I know Mike, he's in the background, he's posting the links to those past or where you can find those webinars. So technology webinars, and we're doing one tomorrow on financial strategies, deeper dive on all of these. Going virtual, all of those will be deeper dives. This is just focused on you. There's some things that are broad, but they all apply to you. So one of the first strategies is that we've got to educate, inform, and reassure staff, clients, and referral sources. So I know that we sort of hinted about this or talked a little bit about this, but it's what Patrick said. There's two elements of this. Whatever we were doing in the past, we've got to up our game. So using email, social media, blogs, webinars, the phone, we've got to reach out to these communities, staff, clients, and referral sources, and speak to them with confidence and empathy, about their fear, their concerns, their frustration. And for each community, you want to see where you can add value for them. So this isn't just telling them, I hope you're okay, or making sure you know that we're using hand sanitizer and keeping social distance at the office. Start to talk to them about what you're doing today for them to add value. So I had, Patrick, I had a pharmacy the other day. They sent me an email and said, here's what we're doing for you right now. We're doing, we'll deliver your prescription for free. We'll do video conferencing with the pharmacy, and they'll do one more thing. But those were things that would benefit the end user right away. So what are you doing that will benefit and add value for staff, clients, and referral sources? So for staff, some examples, and Patrick, you may have other things here to jump on. But we want to provide policies, and Patrick and I are going to give you examples of this on sick leave, paid time off, working from home. We might be able to help them to figure out how to deal with childcare because a lot of them have kids at home now. And we might have some straight talk. Patrick mentioned this earlier. We've got to speak very straight with them about things that will impact them. No, that gives them peace of mind because they can plan as well. Clients and prospects, we can do flex hours, remote sign up, e-sign up, whatever you can think of, and brainstorm internally to add them value. And then referral sources. A lot of your referral sources are just like you. We have, when we talk about marketing, we're going to dig into that a little deeper, but we can start doing webinars right now for how to help them deal with the clients. They've got their own business. They've got their own staff. They've got their own clients. We can send them care packages. We'll give you samples of that. In some cases, listen, your office may be up and running and their building got shut down. It doesn't impact you. You might be able to give them some space. So think about those communities, up the level of communication, and look where you can add value. Patrick, you want to say anything about that?
Excuse me, I would just say that I would use social media even more than usual during this time because people are at home a lot and they're on their computers at home, and even though hopefully they're working and productive, they're probably a little bit more on social media during the day than they were. A lot of people are out of work, and during a time of crisis, people just want to connect with other people, and people are feeling isolated because we can't connect with them much physically. We can't go out to dinner with our friends in most places, for instance. So people are spending a lot of time on social media. So make sure your social media presence is robust and that you're regularly putting on there. And this is the biggest thing for clients and referral sources. It's going to sound super simple. Let them know that you're open for business, right? That you're up and going. I've been astonished at talking to people who are talking about other firms that just shut down.
Yeah.
They just sent their people home and said, we'll restart in 2 weeks. They're literally just shut down. I mean, good, established, respectable firms that are just doing zero right now are not open for business. So that sounds super simple, but you may be more ahead of the curve than you realize if you're just simply open for business and you figured out some things, particularly like the flexible hours, remote sign up, e-signing, right? If you're doing that already, then you are well ahead of the game. So you need to let people know that.
Strategy 2. We're going to spend a little time here. Strategy 2 is protect and maximize your talent. Patrick, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah. So this is kind of a partner level conversation we're having here, because as you look particularly at the worst case scenario, and of course the worst case scenario is not the most likely case scenario, but if you look at the worst case scenario, almost every firm that's here is going to have to address the issue of reducing payroll some way, somehow. So that's not a fun conversation to have. So some of you may have already laid off employees or taken some action on that. But for people that are really worthwhile, you want to do everything you can to keep them around. And this is one of those things where there's a balance, that there is no one size fits all answer. So I'll give you kind of two extremes that I've dealt with among my clients. I've got one client that is sort of over on this extreme that says, look, this is a business. It's got to remain profitable, and I'm going to do what I need to do to make sure that it's profitable. And went through an analysis and decided there were 3 people that were going to lay off and a 4th that was going to receive a significant reduction in pay and hours, and has already acted on that. Now, the belief there was that those cuts, if they come initially during this period of shock, everybody else that's not cut, right, he's going to has communicated, you guys are safe, right? And I need all of you to go through this unless the business itself fails, all of you are safe. So now they've got sort of this hunker down wartime mentality. It's just us. Everybody's really pitched in, but he was super proactive about doing that. On the other end, I've got a client where she and her partners are financially have big resources, and so they've made a decision that they would all go without any kind of pay or compensation for 6 months in order to preserve all of their staff. So that's where your kind of personal values come into this. Are you more of this is just a business and sorry, right? These people have to go, or are you more like this is my family, right? I couldn't let any of them go unless just absolute last resort. That's kind of a value thing that you've got to figure out. that I can't tell you. But within that construct, right, you certainly want to identify who your key people are, which would include things like who would be super hard to replace, right? When this is over, there's going to be a flood of talent on the market, and so some people that are good workers are frankly fairly replaceable, and so they might be their hours may be cut or they may be laid off simply because it's not going to be hard to find somebody to replace them when this is over. There's going to be a lot of people, for the first time in years, frankly, there's going to be a lot of people looking for jobs and good talent. So you want to preserve people that would be hard to replace, that have some sort of unique skill or talent. And then you want to, as one of my clients says, the guy that puts money on the sheet, right? You have some people that are particularly important for cash flow. They're good about bringing money in, and that's going to be so key. So I really want to protect those people. So, obviously, if you've got some people that just aren't very good workers, now's a great time to let them go. I got on the phone yesterday with a client that says, Patrick, my paralegal is killing me. And so, by the end of the call, right, that by the end of the day, that paralegal probably didn't have a job and probably, should have gone months ago. But now's the tripwire for that. So, so make sure you've got some sort of calculus that you prioritize who would stay and who would go, and then think flexibly about it in the sense that hourly people, you can reduce their hours. Almost everybody who's working 40 hours a week would continue working for you at 30 hours a week, because what's their alternative? Unemployment, where they're going to, after a waiting period and dealing with some bureaucracy, they may get $500 a week and then not preserve a job. They'd be much better off to work for you for reduced pay, and when this is over, still be employed, right? And then hopefully just ramp back up to their 40 hours. And even your salaried management level people may be willing to take a percentage pay cut and take on more work. So they may be willing to take a 10 or 25% pay cut and take on some of the duties of some of the hourly people that had to be let go, again, just in this crisis mode to get you through to the other side. So don't be black and white and think either or. Either they're full-time or they're laid off. There's some middle ground that you might be able to save some money in.
And this is in the event that you have to make these difficult decisions. Some of you are able to go virtual and keep everyone productive. So we will talk about a little about the other thing to think about is that a lot of these people that you do want to protect are paycheck to paycheck in a lot of ways. So the government is coming out with some plans. Patrick and I are going to talk about those. You may be in a position or may not, but there are plenty of other vehicles for doing this, of getting them a loan, a no interest loan. We're not saying to do it. Those are just possibilities. So these are some of the tough decisions you're going to make. All of you are in different places. We're just trying to give you some guidelines on what you could do in event of that. And some of these people are, hopefully you've gone remote, even if you haven't had to, or you practice it. But there's going to be a couple of stages or phases. You're going to work together, but with rotation and social distance in the office. You might have a phase that you go, some work at the firm, some work from home. And then the other phase is everybody's gone remote. But however that goes, you're going to have to figure out how to work remotely. So a couple of things. If we're not already remote, make sure everyone has a laptop that's set up with the appropriate level of access. They've got the training they need. Have each department practice working from home a couple of days, especially intake. Some of you, I'm hoping that most of you have the ability to do remote sign up anyways, or e-sign up. But we should get our intake team absolutely practicing from home or remotely. I would recommend, not just me, everyone at Atticus would recommend, if you haven't already been under a quarantine effect, make sure that everybody's taking their laptop home every night, because things change overnight. Also, remote work and telecommuting policy. Mike has put a sample policy up there that talks about equipment liability, home workspace, hours of work, those sort of things. It's a sample. One of the things that we'll tell you is that Atticus at any given day has 500 law firms that are going through this and working their way through this. And a lot of them are sharing some of their best ideas and what's working and not. And so that if you go, you should be, if you're not following the Atticus Advantage Facebook page, I would, or the Twitter account or the LinkedIn account, because we're posting their stuff there. But Mike has already posted this, so you can download it off of this webinar. We're going to talk about managing your team remotely, but Patrick, anything you want to say about this? And we'll talk about hygiene, we'll talk about the technology hygiene as well, cyber hygiene in a moment.
Yeah, I'll probably say more about the hygiene part, but I think you covered the work remote, and everybody should be on. All I would say is if you're not there yet, get on it, because the lockdown is coming to a town near you soon.
So if your team is remote, by the way, even if you're not, this is good because people's anxiety is high. So we have to have a way of managing. We still need to get work done. So one of the tools we use our clients is something called the daily focuser. And it really just gets you focused in the morning and says, okay, what am I going to accomplish today? Our minds are wired to look at and follow a list of things and checklists if we can, if it's given to us. Otherwise, chaos can take hold. So you can create your own, you could use this. But everyone in the working from home should fill out, you can modify one, but should fill out what they're doing for their day to stay focused. And if I get 3 things done today, what would they be? And if those 3 things over here, if those 3 things were completed, what would I do next? The other thing, Patrick said this very early on, is that if we had a meeting once a week, we should have a meeting every day. And so virtually you can do daily huddles. And it's a 15-minute meeting either with a small team or with an individual in the morning, midday, and end of day. And in the morning we talk about, okay, what are we going to get accomplished today? Because remember, they've got new distractions that they never had when they were in the office. So what are we going to get accomplished today? Midday, we can say, how are we doing? Any help, any support you need? People can share wins they've had, especially if they're on a group call from working from home, and then have them share productivity tips. Patrick, do you want to say anything about HubStaff and ActiveTrack? Oh, ActiveTrack is spelled wrong, by the way. Somebody corrected the spelling on it, Patrick, when I gave him the PowerPoint.
In working remotely, of course, and especially in a crisis like this, people are going to be distracted, right? Some people are having to work with 3 kids that are out of school, that are home, maybe a spouse that's also home, the dog's running around, and the crisis itself. So we have to a lot for some level of distraction here for people that aren't used to working from home. Still, though, you want to monitor productivity, and there's technologies that will tell you what websites your staff are visiting, give you keystroke information, occasionally take a photo of a screenshot and send it to you. A couple of them that some of my clients are using, you see at the bottom of the page there, HubStaff and ActiveTrack. ActiveTrack doesn't have the E on it, it's activtrak.com. So I'm not endorsing those like I get a product endorsement or something, but there are other programs like that. If you don't have one of those, they're actually pretty cheap, pretty affordable, but they will help you know if people are being productive or not. And of course, I think it's always a good idea to tell your staff you're doing this, right? If they know that they're being held accountable, that you're seeing what they're doing or not doing, that hopefully will forestall them just wandering off and spending all day on the home shopping network. I used to say ESPN.com, but I guess nobody's going to ESPN.com right now. It's no sports happening.
And
so
we have,
check those out.
And we have some clients that are doing well-being check-in calls. They're just checking in. They have someone assigned to check in, make sure they're okay. Do they need anything? Everything working? Anything we can do to support you. So these are some of the things that will make the productivity work and normalize it. People are going to have to adjust. Everybody gets into their own rhythm, but I think Patrick could probably say the same thing, but I find people are sometimes far more productive when they get into a groove at home than they were ever at the office. And sometimes they find themselves working far harder and because they have access to their equipment and stuff, and work harder than they did when they were in the office.
Yeah, I remember distinctly when I first started working from home way back in 2002. Uh, Somebody asked me after my first week of working at home, how was it and what was different? And I said, well, two things were different, one of which not surprising, one of which was very surprising. The thing that wasn't surprising was I missed my colleagues, right? I missed seeing my colleagues down the hall that were friends and chatting with them. So that's another reason why you want to connect regularly. There is a social function of work, and people want to connect with their friends, even if it's over Zoom for a minute. But secondly, my productivity went through the roof because I didn't have any interruptions, and I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, so if depending on the someone's personal situation and their home office setup, they may actually be more productive and not less.
Yeah, and so Patrick, let's transition to if we're working remotely. Listen, you're going to have to deal with your IT person on getting people working remote and what it takes to do that from a interfacing perspective. But there's some things that we want to pay attention to. Patrick, do you want to speak to some of the cyber hygiene issues?
Yeah, so I've told all my clients you need to have two people on speed dial, your IT guy and your employment lawyer. We'll say more about the employment lawyer maybe at the end. But yeah, so I was doing a webinar for some of my clients on the West Coast recently, and there was maybe 20, 25 people on the phone on the webinar. And I said, some of you think you've got this down pat, because everybody's working from home because California was quarantined much earlier than a lot of places, and you got people working from home and you think it's good, but in a group this big, I guarantee you there's somebody that everything is nailed down except that they're working on their home Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi password at home is Bob123. And then I heard not the lighthearted chuckle you just heard from Mark. I heard the chuckle of recognition, the oh crap chuckle, right? I hadn't thought of that, and I could just vision people that immediately the staff member that was most likely to have the weak password popped into their head, right? So your IT guy needs to really go through all that in detail with you and make sure you're secure, because you know who else is seeing opportunity here? Hackers and ransomware people. And they've already been really upping their efforts the last 2 years, if you haven't noticed. And right now, those guys are going to be smelling blood in the water. And you've got HIPAA documents, things that are just covered by normal attorney-client privilege, sensitive financial documents, perhaps. You got a lot of stuff that needs to stay private, which also means much more low-tech, right? Who can see your worker's computer screen, right? Is there a roommate, right? If they're working from a kitchen table, are there children or their roommates that are going to see sensitive information that they ought not? So it's not just high-tech stuff. It's sometimes low-tech stuff that has to do with the hygiene.
Good. And also check with your liability insurer, because listen, there's a chance they're not going to cover some of the problems if you haven't taken some of these measures. And by
the way, you can get cyber liability insurance for cybersecurity. There was a firm in the Midwest. I don't want to say the name because I'm not sure I've got it right, but it was a sizable firm that I think does a lot of Social Security that got hacked and gave up a lot of personal information, and now they're hundreds of thousands of dollars into paying for that. So don't be that guy.
Yeah. Also, protect your file. Some of you are still have hard copy files that people have to take home. Hopefully, most of it is digital now, scanned. If you can scan a lot of it before you can, this is another opportunity to go paperless, and why people have been driving you to being paperless for a long time. But protect the documents. Whether they're on the computer or they're hard copy, because family members, roommates, we don't need anyone seeing sensitive information. People need to be coached on locking up these documents, about where and what to print out and what to do with those materials, and even their computer screen, leaving sensitive information open. It's a new era that you're adjusting to. It's one of those things that, while this is a crisis, I think it's going, as Patrick said, I think it's going to breed a whole new level of opportunity for you to work more remotely than you ever have in the past, in the future, even when things are picked up and healthy again. Patrick, you want to say anything about this?
No, I think you covered it well.
Okay. Strategy 4, cases. You've got work in progress right now. You've got work in the pipeline. And to Patrick's point earlier, don't cancel appointments if you can help it. Move them to a virtual environment. Tell people, yes, we're still meeting, because some people have just gone south and they're not responding to clients. They're not getting out in front of them. They're canceling appointments. Show them that you're still working. Don't cancel them. Go virtual. And if you have to move them, still don't use the word cancel. Tell we're going to reschedule. We're going to postpone. I don't want to hear the word cancel in the conversations. So you're going to have to triage some work. Patrick, you want me to walk through this, or do you want to walk through it?
You can do it.
Okay. So we're going to triage cases in the pipeline right now. So we're going to work with our either our pre-lit teams or our litigation teams, and we want them to look at their inventory and make sure that they've highlighted, paid attention to, put in the forefront anything that has statutes of limitations or other pending deadlines. We know the courts are closed right now, but it doesn't mean that we can't have these front and center for us. Also, cases that are already settled and can drive cash right away, or anything that the insurance companies aren't closed down, they're still working right now. So we can still move those things forward. It may be a little difficult, but let's keep those prioritized. And cases that need attention over the next coming month to 6 weeks, let's put them in perspective. Let's not lose focus on them. There may be cases that we can't get, the doctors aren't going to be able to work on anything, the clinics aren't, the courts aren't, and there's things that can be put on the back burner right now. But I would be having my team work on every single file using a priority to keep moving it forward to the next level. What can we get done on this file? That's the question. On every file, given whatever its priority it is, what can we get done today? What can we move forward? Can we bring it up to the next level so when the courts do open, we're ready like nobody's business? Patrick,
Right.
anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, I would just add in right now, insurance companies are still settling cases, right? They're not delaying or refusing to settle, at least as far as I can tell. So, as you know, as we would say in the South, make hay when the sun shines, right? So figure out what's low-hanging fruit can be settled and bring that cash in the door now. Don't delay on that. Other cases that are further off would get a lower priority in my book. I would also remind you, to watch the stock market, because that's going to be key to how the insurance companies respond. It's not the only factor, but it's going to be a key factor. And so in a not very happy case scenario, right, they may really slow down payments. And how we responded to that most successfully in 2009, 2010 was something we called the fast, slow, fast approach. Because we realized at that point, the only leverage we had on the insurance companies to get them to settle was the threat of a trial date. Because when insurance companies hit up their own financial crisis, right, they still have to make payroll, they still have to pay taxes, they still have to pay rent, but they don't have to pay claims. They don't have to pay claims until a jury has entered a verdict and a judge has entered an order. So they were delaying. So you got to get that trial date set. You got to get that clock ticking. So I wouldn't be, if you have capacity now, I wouldn't be against that as a sort of a prophylactic measure. Go ahead and get as many cases into suit as possible and get that clock ticking towards trial, even if the courts are closed for a few weeks. You'll be ahead of the game when they reopen. So right now, I think everybody's still settling. I don't think we're seeing a lot of delay yet, but this is where you guys can communicate with us, right? Let us know what you're seeing. Because when if it starts to slow down, I want to be the first one to know it. And if it slows down, fast, slow, fast. I'm sorry, the slow part is, fast is put it in a suit. The slow part is then sit on it for a while, because maybe it wasn't like they settled nothing. It was they didn't settle as much. So don't pour a lot of time into it early on that might not result in a settlement. And then of course, as you get near to trial, then you got to go fast again and begin proving every case and doing a lot of discovery. But so that was what seemed to work best and rescued a lot of my clients cash flow wise in 2009, 2010.
Well, that's a great segue, Patrick. Patrick, also, I've got 3 more to go through, so I'm going to move along a little faster.
Okay.
Only because I want to give people a chance if we have time for some questions. And I don't know if Patrick's schedule can handle it, but if I can, I'll stay on and answer questions. So Patrick just said cash flow and financial planning. So this is a basic perspective that we need to be working on. From a financial perspective, cash flow is king right now. So it's going, well, if it's not, it will be very soon. So you want to assess your essential and non-essential expenses. Start reducing. We're not waiting on this. I don't care how good you are right now in your cash situation. Right now, we're reducing non-essential expenses. We're preserving cash. If you have a credit line, we're recommending that people max out their credit line. And put that credit line, I personally would move it to a separate bank. We've done that here, only because if the bank does tighten up like they did after some other crisis, especially the last one, they close down credit lines, and if they can, they'll pull the money right out of the account. So you may not need that money, but it's good to have it, and after the crisis, you can dump it back into the pay off the credit line. Patrick mentioned this earlier. Let's have an austerity plan in place. Let's make sure we know where the cuts, who's going to be cut, how it's going to happen in the event of a long-term slowdown, that this gets out of hand. It's like worst case scenario planning. Now, I might trigger it at a particular time, but I have to make sure I have the plan done. That's going to give you peace of mind, and it's going to reduce some of the anxiety. Establish a cash flow projection system and monitor. If you are monitoring it monthly or even weekly, go twice a week. And we have to project where cash flow, there's some cash flow you can keep projecting, but there's going to be indicators that it's slowing down, which is going to be your trigger to make the cuts. For anyone on the call that's an Atticus member, one of the tools you want to use is something called a cash flow focuser. And we're doing a call tomorrow. We'll mention it at the end on a little bit more specific around how to tighten down the cash flow and how to monitor that. But know the trigger points for making cuts and where you can make them, and be ready to do it. Patrick, I'll talk about where else they can find help, but did you want to say anything about this?
No, I think you covered it well. I think that's good basic stuff.
So where can I find help? There's quite a bit of it right now. Some of it's a little quicker than other. The banks have their credit lines, both business and personal. They're very available right now. They're offering, most banks are offering emergency relief loans, and they're incredibly good terms. 60 months at prime, no fee, no payments for 12 months. And even better deals than that. So that's one of the places to get it. The state is, in most of your states, they're starting the emergency relief loans. They take a little longer to get, but those will be very, very helpful to most of you, and I would start looking at them. At the federal level, tax credits for paid sick leave. You can go to the IRS and look at that. By the way, I'll mention this around tax relief stuff. For employees, you've got they just passed the Emergency Family Care and Medical Leave Act. I think I'm not sure if that's attached, Mike. There may be something attached, but you can Google that. Somebody else has probably sent that to. It'll be on our Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. But there's a lot of provisions there that are able to help your staff. It'll kick in April 2nd, and it might take them 8 or 10 days with no financial support. You can cover that maybe, but then they're going to have quite a bit of financial support. I think the government's stepping up very well here. Around tax relief on people even going remote, some of these things, you need to talk to your CPA, but track and document any expenses related to the virus and how you're responding to it. So these are things we're going sort of lightly over them, but all of these should apply to you and should help make a difference and find help. Patrick, anything you want to jump on here?
Yeah, just specifically the Small Business Administration, if you go to their website, they've got a section called Disaster, and that's where you can go to apply for a loan. So if you're thinking about it, right, I would I assume at some point there's going to be a glut of people applying, so I might do it proactively sooner rather than later. I would definitely pull the money out of the credit line, because that's money you definitely can control. You can have that now, you can have it today, and that'll be available. You might get turned down for a loan, you might get turned down for some sort of grant. The Federal Reserve announced yesterday or the day before that they've got the details I don't think have come out yet. They're also going to be doing some sort of small business loan program. They're calling it the Main Street program. So if you just want to Google Federal Reserve Main Street loans, more details will be coming out of that hopefully very soon. So I do think the government is taking a much more proactive role than they did in 2008, 2009 when credit really seized up.
Also, when we mention employees, and you can do two things to remember with employees. You can lay employees off if you have to, which means that they can collect unemployment and get this. The other thing you can do is furlough them. And the furlough means they can still get the assistance, the government assistance, but it's letting you know there's intention to bring them back. So it's a slight difference, but it might be an important difference to the employee. So this is a tricky one because we got a lot of work on this. We've got a lot here that I'm going to go through a little quickly. We did a whole webinar on this yesterday on marketing. Michael put that link through there. So we talked about marketing at length. But for PI firms, marketing is marketing. And while it may be a little different with social distancing restrictions, it's still about maintaining rapport, strengthening your relationships, and creating top-of-mind awareness, TOMA, with your referral sources, and that includes your clients. So it's still about staying focused and disciplined. And guess what? There's nothing new here. We're still marketing to clients. We're still marketing to past clients, referral sources, your top 20, your farm team, your vendors. Nothing has changed about that. So we're still going to do it. For the advertisers, keep advertising. You're going to get more for your buck right now. Negotiate with the advert that you've already spent or your rates that you have with them. They're going to do a 50% reduction, sometimes better, but talk to them. Some of our PI firms are considering new messaging, just have a new ad out there where it's how can we help right now. Some of you would be able to do that digitally. Obviously, I hope that most of you are doing some sort of remote e-signups, but experiment with some of the intake methods that would make a difference. We know e-signup is really critical, mobile signups, drive-up signup. We have clients, not PI. I haven't got a PI client, Patrick, that I've seen do this, but we have estate planners where people are coming up and doing drive-up sign-ups for things and handling documents and also doing it over video. When you're marketing with your clients, we should have a plan to call or send a personal email to all of our current clients. This doesn't mean you have to individually do it, but who's ever the lead attorney on that file or the lead paralegal or the customer service, the client service rep on it, someone's got to send a personal email or a call, letting them know that their case is critical to us, we're on top of it, what we're expecting to happen. You could give them a little script, how to best contact the firm if you need to contact. And we mentioned this earlier, find ways to add value to your clients. Government alerts, let them know, remote e-sign up, flexible hours, virtual seminar, which is this, a webinar, on issues that might impact them. Guides on how to work from home. It might be valuable to them and they might not be getting it from another source. So continue to add value. When it comes to referral sources, break out your top 100 or your top 20 list. Let's make a point to connect with all of them. You can use drive time to reach them. So if you have to drive someplace, have a list of 2 or 3 people you're going to reach out to on your referral network. Again, this is not very different than when before we had the crisis. But here's the difference, and Patrick sort of pointed to this, that a number of your competitors are going to stop production. Most of them are going to stop marketing. So if you can get these other things that we've talked about working, you're going to be able to capitalize so that the referral sources and your marketing is working when you come out of this. With your referral source, start collaborating with them. Lots of things you can do. Have them write an article about how you're dealing with these issues. Joint webinar. Some of our clients are doing things together like blood drives or something to support their local hospital or the first responders, in this case, the nurses and the doctors. So they're doing a program with them. Some of our clients are making sure they're still reaching out to their referral sources. That's because they can strategize. And a lot of Patrick's clients are in this place that they can think ahead of the game. So you want to be memorable. Listen, that doesn't go away. We're still marketing. Be memorable. You can send chocolate. You can send, we're not a big fan of sending drinks during this. People will probably be drinking too much. But, we'll get through this together. First aid kits to their team. Again, doesn't have to be alcohol. To let them know this is a first aid kit for you and your team to get through this, and let them send to your home if you can. Also, hyper-focus on your social media platforms. A good balance of that is 20, 50, 30. Your social media can have firm updates, 20%. Here are the resources that we're got right now for you, links, things they can use, 50% of your time. And you can use 30% of it to shine and highlight your other referral sources, team members, healthcare workers. Ensuring that you have a social media policy. No, Patrick, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Someone just gave me a clue that they couldn't hear. No jokes about the coronavirus. Strategy 7, start working on your marketing infrastructure. Listen, you're going to have some downtime. Work on the website, content, SEO standings, update your AVO, get testimonials working. There are a couple of apps that will help you do that. You might start a podcast. You might work on training your marketing assistant. Some of you will use the time to create a brand video. Now listen, this is money out. But some of you will have some resources. We're still spending money on marketing where we can. So it's some work you can do there. And also you could post a simple crisis-related video on your homepage. It's you or someone on your team talking about what we're doing and how we're dealing with it and how we can help you. And then there's the always reread, a great book, how good attorneys become great marketers. There's also attached to this webinar, there's a guide. The book is based on marketing habits and assets that you build over time. So there's a guide for how to use that virtually on this that you can download to just work it with the book. For solos, a quick reminder, you'll want to have a backup attorney in case something happens to you. Those of you with partners or other attorneys or a larger firm, you'll be fine. But solos that don't have another attorney, make sure you have a backup attorney. So a couple of quick final thoughts and questions. We said crisis breeds opportunity. Patrick, do you want to say anything about these opportunities?
Yeah, one of the opportunities is there's going to be some lawyers that were already near retirement that are just going to look at this crisis and say, screw it, I'm done. So I think there's some older attorneys out there that will be selling their practice. They may not be older, they may be younger, but there'll be attorneys that aren't set up very well technologically to work remotely. They can't really handle their caseload. You could come and take over some of their cases or co-counsel with them. But I would look for people, particularly older attorneys that might be general practitioners that have some PI cases, right, that either aren't set up well for this, or they're ready to retire and they just don't want to fool with all the hassle that's coming.
Yeah, we had an attorney the other day, Patrick, say that he's buying a bankruptcy practice because he said that on the marketing call, he says, I've got a guy just like you're explaining, and he's buying a bankruptcy practice because he knows it's one of the things that's going to spike. The other thing is stay informed. So again, our Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn pages has all of the expertise we can collect from you. We run a coronavirus preparedness hotline. It's live. It's every day Eastern Standard Time. Where Patrick and I and a few others are talking how to make sure there's a time for West Coast people. The dial-in information is here. You probably would have seen that in other communications from Atticus, but that's live every single day, and there coach at least one, maybe two on that hotline. We've done a webinar that Mike probably posted links on, technology, optimizing the virtual environment, marketing, and we're doing one on preserving cash flow tomorrow. So we are at the 12 o'clock time, Patrick, but I can stay on. I don't know if you can, Patrick, and if there's some questions and Mike can hear us, or Mike
yes,
can
I
speak
I'm
to
here.
us. Okay, we could take a couple of questions.
Okay.
Patrick, are you able to stay for a bit, or you have to
Yeah,
run?
I can stay for a few minutes, yeah.
Okay, so I know some of you have to leave, but we want to take some questions or comments. Mike, I'll turn that over to you.
Okay. Our first question is, would it be prudent to ask lawyers to take a short-term pay cut?
Yes, depending on your situation, yes, absolutely. It depends on where you are financially, again, and going to that prioritization of talent. There's some guidelines on how to do that. I'm not going to go through those right now, but I think we've posted them on our Facebook. Patrick, do you want to say anything about that?
Just that it's a very circumstance-driven answer to that question. So if my client asked me that, right, if I didn't already know, I would ask lots of questions about their financial situation, their history with the associates. Yeah, at the risk of turning this into a marketing thing for Atticus, some of you are going to realize what I need now is a coach.
You're right.
That can give me specific advice, but that's very circumstantial. It's hard to give a blanket answer. But I would say that generally people would be willing to accept some sort of pay cut if it's necessary.
Okay.
Not a lot of options right now.
Our next question is, no new cases are coming in. Is it better to furlough employees and have them come back after the lockdown ends? I'm in Los Angeles to save money, or keep them working now on the same cases. If the latter, they may be less busy when the lockdown ends.
Patrick, do you want to say something about this?
Again, there's a lot of financial circumstances there that would determine the answer. So I would say if you're in a relatively strong financial position, and you've got a good staff, I would certainly make every effort to preserve them and minimize the financial impact on them of the crisis, right? If you can minimize the impact on them, they're going to be they should be super loyal and grateful after this is over. So, so I would say if you've got the financial resources, I would err on the side of keeping people and minimizing the impact. So no pay cuts, no furlough, whatever. I will say I worked with a firm in New Orleans that went through Hurricane Katrina, where downtown was cordoned off and half the staff was homeless. And I talked to those partners every day between Labor Day and Christmas that year. But they emerged from that. Nobody got laid off. Nobody got reduced pay. Nobody even missed a paycheck. And that was unbelievable because New Orleans was so devastated afterwards. And it couldn't have been more than 5% of the firms in New Orleans were able to do that. And so on the far side of that, though, their staff was so loyal because they realized what the partners had done that was very unique on their behalf.
Yeah, and if I agree everything Patrick said, if I can keep them productive, if there's work to do to work files up to get ready for the next level of where that file will go, whether it's going into demand or it's going into settlement, I would keep them productive and working on things if I can. Another one, Mike?
Yes. How about moving credit lines into an IOLTA account?
Patrick, I don't know what that account is, so maybe you do.
That's a trust account. I think
trust account.
I think you've got to check with your bar organization, your state bar association.
I'm sorry, the trust. I apologize. Yes. Good, Mike.
Okay. Do you know of a national venue in which to post ads for contract attorneys?
Oh,
There is one, and
yes, I'm blanking on it.
there is one. Do you have one, Patrick?
I do, but I'm blanking on it. I can't think of it.
So we'll post that on Facebook. I know Sean, who
Google
might be on
knows.
the call. Yeah, you could Google it. Sean McNallis, who I think is on the call. She can probably type something in. If she can be unmuted, she might be able to tell us. Either way, we'll post it on the Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, so you can get that. It's a great question, but both of us are blank on that right now, the name of the company that our clients have used.
You can certainly look at Upwork, which is not just for attorneys, but as a general contract employee kind of site. And there's other similar to Upwork. That's good. As a matter of fact, that was just texted to me by one of my clients who's on the call, Rory Pendergast. Mike, I don't know if you can unmute Rory specifically. And I don't know if Tom Tona is still on the line, but I would invite them if they have anything they want to add in, because I think they've dealt particularly well with the crisis to date so far. I don't know if we can unmute Rory first and then Tom if
I'll
they're
unmute
available.
Rory now. Rory, you are unmuted, so you can speak aloud and be heard by everyone.
So by way of introduction, Rory's a fantastic PI attorney down in San Diego, very creative, willing to try new things, different things. Anything you would add in to the rest of the group, Rory, that you think is important that maybe we didn't highlight enough?
And Roy, you may be self-muted on your phone, or your phone might need you to press *6. I'm not
He's
sure.
on his computer microphone, so he may not. He may be listening to us through his speakers.
Okay.
Okay.
Why are we trying to do that,
Tom is
Mike?
here. I can attempt to unmute him if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't you unmute Tom and see if Tom has anything he wants to
Tom, if you can,
contribute or add in.
if you've got a microphone handy, you are free to speak.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we hear you, Tom.
I think probably the biggest thing I would say is just to reinforce the need to act. I'm speaking to a lot of the DYMers that are in my group. Herb in North Carolina, Herb Auger, Deb Maddox out in California, who's not a PI person. But what I'm finding is that the conversations are very valuable to have on a daily basis, even if it's just to commiserate with the pain. But, Herb had given me a great idea about managing remote workers using Hubstaff. And Deb had inspired me to pick up the phone and get a employment attorney on my speed dial, as you've reinforced with me, Patrick, as well. The one thing that I feel has put me ahead of the curve is literally I'm taking a decision. I'm running it up the chain with Patrick, who's my coach, my CFO, my legal administrative engineer, who's on the call, and then I'm making a decision. I'm not letting it go an hour longer. And as I'm saying to everybody is, I'll look back after, and if some of my decisions were wrong, they were the best they could be at the time. But not acting, I can confirm for sure that I've been calling around in my marketplace, and a lot of my staff who, have friends from prior workplaces have confirmed major firms are closed right now. 75-man law firms that personal injury, largest in our market, closed because they don't have remote capacity and didn't plan for it and are not planning for it. And they've told their employees, we'll see you in 2 weeks. We're not paying you if we're coming back in 2 weeks. And what I've found is that is the consensus. And when I'm talking to adjusters, hopefully everybody on the call is talking to adjusters, I'm asking them. I spend about 10 or 15 minutes asking how they are, how is their family. My normal aggressive negotiation style is no longer that model in this environment. It's more of we're in this together approach. And I'm spending 15 minutes on every call just asking how people are doing. And then the leading question of, have you talked to any other law firms? Are you getting busier? And so far, in the last 3 days, they've said, no, you're the only law firm that's called us. And we have been settling, knock on wood, in the last 3 days. But again, I think a lot of it comes from that shock of not knowing what to do. And I think the biggest takeaway that you said earlier was take action. Stop thinking about what you need to do. At some point, you have to decide, take the decision, and then we'll look in the rearview mirror. And some of those decisions may not be the best decisions, but they're the best decisions for right now.
Yep.
Good. Thanks,
So
Tom.
thanks, Tom. That's great. You're so great. And by the way, for those of you that may not be an Atticus client, Tom referenced DYM. It's a Dominate Your Market. He participates with a group, and they're fairly high-level attorneys in their marketplaces. And when I mean high-level, high-functioning, and the really smart ones also use someone like Patrick to get things done. So, Mike, I think we have to start bringing this to a close so people can get on with their life. Mike, is there anything we need to say to bring this to a close?
Only that any questions that were asked that did not get answered on the air, our team members will be reviewing them, and we'll follow up with you. So this session's also been recorded, and we're likely to be able to get it up on our website by sometime tomorrow if you'd like to rewatch it or share it with any of your colleagues. I posted the link in the chat box, not only to our webinars page where you can watch replays of previous webinars, also upcoming ones to register for, as well as links to all of our social media accounts. And again, all the documents that Mark showed you today are available in your GoToWebinar dashboard for downloading. And if you have any other questions, you can always email us at grow@atticusadvantage.com.
Good. Thank you, Mike. Patrick, thank you. It's always great to have your expertise here. I just enjoy your humor as well. So I won't go any more with that. I enjoy your humor. And I just want to tell everyone that we're with you. We're here for you. There's lots of resources. We will get through this, and we look forward to being on the other side with you. Patrick, anything you want to say to be complete?
No, just thanks very much to Mike and to you, Mark, and everybody in there. Yeah, decide some things and take action. If you're behind the curve, start now.
Very good.
You'll catch up.
All right, everyone. Be well, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.